Campus life. Before we touch upon the university policies that steer students toward alcohol or fail to counter societal pressures to drink and the unfortunate impact of these policies, it is worth considering for a moment the fact that students are in many ways conditioned for an alcohol-based campus culture before they even matriculate. George W. Dowdall discusses this predisposition in his book College Drinking, Reframing a Social Problem. While it has become fashionable in some quarters to talk about college-heavy drinking as an epidemic, it is one that many students freely choose. But what they want is shaped powerfully in popular culture, much of it skillfully manipulated by the advertising of the alcohol industry. A significant core of college drinkers come to college not only expecting but also seeking a party-centered lifestyle, and colleges hardly stand in their way. Campuses are a microcosm of the broader society when it comes to alcohol and marijuana use. Although both substances are illegal for students under the age of 21, the punishments for those who use them are far from equal. Most universities impose policies mandating that students who are busted using cannabis will face more severe sanctions than students caught drinking alcohol. We are aware of numerous students who have been removed from campus housing for possessing a small amount of marijuana in their dorm room. Yet these same students would have received a slap on the wrist, most likely in the form of a warning or campus probation, if alcohol had been present. Take Purdue University in Indiana, for example. This school imposes a zero-tolerance policy for students who are caught with marijuana in their dorms. This means that the possession of any amount of cannabis will result in immediate cancellation of their campus housing contract. By contrast, Purdue employs a three-strikes policy for underage possession of alcohol. Bob Heiter, Director of Administration for University Residence Halls at Purdue, justifies the school's inconsistent policy this way. Illegal drugs are against the law for everyone, while alcohol is against the law for a larger portion of students, but not for everyone. Society seems to take a different approach to alcohol than they do illegal drugs. We reflect that societal difference. Of course, universities like Purdue are under no obligation to kick students out of campus housing for minor marijuana offenses. In fact, many places this campus-imposed penalty is far more severe than any sanctions a student would face for violating their state marijuana laws, which typically punish first-time offenders with a fine or probation. Sure, we acknowledge that university governments are bound by a responsibility to punish behavior that is not consistent with the law, but they are not legally obligated to establish stringent penalties such as enforcing zero-tolerance housing policies or barring students with minor pot violations from ever holding student office, as is the policy of the University of Maryland at College Park. More importantly, they are under no legal obligation to treat students who illegally possess marijuana on campus more severely than they sanction students who illegally possess alcohol. Yet most colleges do, and often for no reason other than a perceived need to reflect existing societal differences. And by maintaining these policies in the face of student opposition, a subject we touch upon in Chapter 10, university governments and their boards of trustees are making a conscious, if inadvertent, decision to steer students toward the use of alcohol. And what are the ramifications of these kinds of campus policies? Like on the real world, the picture isn't pretty. First, the use of alcohol by college students is rampant. According to data from the Harvard School of Public Health College Alcohol Study, approximately 80% of college students drink alcohol. Figures for binge drinking are even more startling. For instance, more than 44% of students surveyed in 2001 said they had engaged in binge drinking in the preceding 2 weeks, and more than 22% had done so at least 3 times in that time period. Predictably, these frequent binge drinkers and those around them often suffer as a result. As described by Dowdall in College Drinking, Frequent binge drinkers were 7 to 10 times more likely than the non-binge drinkers to get into trouble with campus police, damage property or get injured, not use protection when having sex, or engage in unplanned sexual activity. The social consequences of all this student drinking are even more alarming. At the most tragic level, alcohol abuse is a leading cause of fatalities on college campuses. In 2001, there were an estimated 1,700 alcohol-related unintentional injury deaths among college students and others aged 18 to 24. These deaths are just the tip of the alcohol-related injury iceberg. Researchers estimate that every year approximately 600,000 students between the ages of 18 and 24 are unintentionally injured while under the influence of alcohol. Of course, those who drink are not the only ones adversely affected. Even more disturbing is the number of injuries to others that are caused by students under the influence of alcohol. It is estimated that each year approximately 700,000 students between the ages of 18 and 24 are assaulted by students who have been drinking, and close to 100,000 students between the ages of 18 and 24 are victims of alcohol-related sexual assault or date rape. Yet these raw numbers only tell part of the story. The much broader impact of alcohol abuse on campus is evident when one looks at the percentage of violent acts that are booze-related. According to a 1994 report by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse, CASA, 95% of all campus assaults are alcohol-related, and 90% of all reported campus rapes involve a victim or an assailant who has been drinking alcohol. University officials are well aware of these startling statistics, as is evident by the quote at the beginning of this chapter. Campus leaders not only recognize that alcohol is a frequent cause of injuries and assaults, but many also believe that it is a factor in almost all campus assaults. Think about this point for a moment. These same officials are aware that students use marijuana on their campuses most likely to a greater extent than they would like. Yet, despite pot's popularity among the student body, you rarely, if ever, hear university officials or campus police publicly blaming assaults or rapes on marijuana abuse. In other words, the people responsible for maintaining safety on college campuses recognize that alcohol use frequently leads to widespread injuries and violent student behavior, while marijuana use does not. You would think that leaders of institutions of higher learning would rationally and impartially examine this data and act accordingly. Think again. Confronted with this nationwide college drinking epidemic, university leaders have generally concluded that the best approach to this problem is to instruct students, including underage students, how to consume booze more responsibly. In short, universities are implicitly and in some cases explicitly endorsing alcohol as the only acceptable recreational substance of choice for students. So how are universities attempting to encourage students to moderate their intake of alcohol? One popular method is to promote social norms, meaning that university officials educate young people about other students' drinking habits, which tend to be lower than otherwise assumed, as well as their attitudes toward abusive drinking by others. The belief behind this strategy is that students will learn to appreciate that they do not need to drink to excess to fit in with one another, and will recognize that many of their peers find overindulgence in alcohol to be a turnoff. These are laudable goals, of course, yet the schizophrenic nature of this pro-alcohol, anti-alcohol campaign is all too apparent. Take the e-chug program, for example. This program is widely used by universities across the country and is sometimes even a requirement for first-year students. While its purpose is to show students through the use of personal surveys the potentially problematic and atypical nature of their drinking, the name of the program sends just the opposite message to participants. Welcome to college, everyone. Here's a nice chug email to set the tone for the next 4 or more years. Now drink responsibly and don't chug too much. Similarly, In the introduction of this book, we described a prominent effort among university presidents to address the problem of alcohol abuse and related violence on campuses. The more than 130 members of the Amethyst Initiative have publicly called for a national debate on lowering the drinking age to 18 years of age. Proponents of this measure believe that this change will bring student drinking out into the open and will lead to more responsible behavior. However one feels about the merits of this proposal, there is no arguing that it is based on the assumption that college students are going to drink alcohol one way or the other, and that the best outcome our society can hope for is some kind of moderation of this behavior. But we contend that this assessment is incomplete and pose an alternative question. That is, if both alcohol and marijuana are currently illegal for those under the age of 21, why is it acceptable to encourage college students to drink responsibly, but not appropriate to suggest that they should party responsibly with marijuana instead? More specifically, if 130 university presidents believe we should have a debate about making alcohol legal for students under 21, shouldn't they also endorse a similar discussion regarding whether to make a less harmful substance available as a legal alternative?